Okay, we're going to go through a few more examples here because we haven't gotten through every kind of possibility with trig. Okay, so here we have angle 35, okay, and we're given, or we need to find the hypotenuse, and we're given the adjacent. So I think about SOHCAHTOA, and I realize that cosine has both adjacent and hypotenuse in it. So I'm going to set up my cosine. My angle measure of 35 goes right next to my trig, and then adjacent on top and hypotenuse on the bottom. Now if we're going to find x, notice that x is now on the bottom, unlike the other examples. So in this case, we still need to multiply by the denominator, the bottom, because I need to get x upstairs. So I'm going to multiply by x to move it to the top. So now I have x times cosine of 35 equals 8. Now this part, you guys, is just algebra. Okay, so it's nothing new besides the cosine being in there. Now if I want to get x by itself and I have multiplication going on here, I'm going to divide by cosine on both sides. So that crosses off. So I have x equals 8 divided by cosine of 35. Now this is what I'm going to be plugging into my calculator. Okay, so 8 divided by cosine of 35, enter, and that side length is going to be about 9.77. So I go back, and our hypotenuse is going to be about 9.77 units. Okay, so that's just another type of example when x isn't in that 8 spot where it has been in the last examples. There's just an extra algebra step in there. All right, so here we have another example. We're given angle 37, so that means we have the adjacent, and we need to know the hypotenuse. Notice that the opposite, there's nothing over here, so we don't care about the opposite side. Now thinking about my SOHCAHTOA, I already kind of have it memorized where I know cosine has the one with the adjacent and the hypotenuse. Okay, so then I'm going to go in cosine of 37 equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Right? And again, notice that the x is in the denominator, so I need to multiply by x to move it up to the top. So that cancels. So I have x times cosine of 37 equals 11. Now x is still not by itself, so I'm going to divide by cosine of 37 to cancel it over here and move it on over to my right hand side. So I have x equals 11 over cosine of 37. And that's what I'm going to plug into my calculator. I already forgot it. 11 divided by cosine of 37. 13.77. So I go back, and x will be about 13.77. Okay, we have one more example. Okay, here we are given, or need to find, the opposite, and we're given the adjacent. Okay, so we are going to set up our SOHCAHTOA. Okay, I always keep it just at the top of my paper so I don't have to rewrite it every problem. Okay, so just once is fine. And notice that opposite and adjacent are right here with our tangent. My angle measure is 50.1. The opposite goes first, which is x, and the adjacent goes on the bottom, which is 5. And then we need to solve for x. So I'm going to multiply by 5 to get rid of it over here. Notice that we're always multiplying by the denominator. So we have 5 times tangent of 50.1 will give me my x. So I'm going to plug in 5 times tangent of 50.1, enter, and it's pretty close to 6, 5.98. So 5.98 is going to be my x, or my opposite side. And these are all approximate answers. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect every time. Right? I also want you to think about what happens if we're given a triangle that has a 30, 60, 90 going on here. If we have a 30, 60, 90 going on, we can use our special right triangles. That's always an option. Right? If you're like Trig, it kind of confuses me, or whatever it may be, you can always go to the Pythagorean theorem and the special triangles if it's allowed. Right? Obviously, we cannot do the Pythagorean theorem here because we're only given one side length. Right? Now, since it's a 30, 60, 90, we can use special triangles. Right? So we can go from the hypotenuse to the short leg and work our way around. That's fine. We can do that, but I think trig can sometimes be easier because I know special triangles were a more difficult unit. So here, from angle 60, the one that's given to us, we have the hypotenuse and we have the adjacent. Okay, so then I'm going to think about my SOHCAHTOA. Which one has hypotenuse and adjacent? That's my lovely cosine. Okay, my angle measure always goes next to my trig in the parentheses. And my adjacent goes on top, and my hypotenuse goes on the bottom. So I need to solve for x, so I'm going to multiply by 11 on both sides. So I have 11 times cosine of 60 equals x, and that's what I'm going to plug into my calculator. Okay, so I have 11 times cosine of 60. Oh, 5.5, nice and easy number. Okay, so x ends up being 5.5 units.